In the bustling streets of Independence Layout, one man found love, but he didn't know he had married a spirit desperate for peace. Chris, a 32-year-old civil engineer, had lived in Independence Layout for over 5 years. He kept a tight schedule: work, church, gym, repeat. But one Saturday morning, he decided to visit Garki Market instead of his usual grocery store. Something pulled him there, like a whisper in the wind. As he weaved through rows of traders calling out prices, his eyes fell on a woman standing by the plantain sellers. She wore a flowing white dress, untouched by the red dust around her. Her skin glistened, and her long black hair tumbled down her back. Chris stopped. She wasn't just beautiful, she was otherworldly. Their eyes met. She smiled, then turned as if expecting him to follow. And he did. "Good morning," he said, catching up beside her. "Morning," she replied with a soft voice that curled like smoke. "My name is Precious." He introduced himself and they began to talk about plantains, about the heat, about life. She was quick-witted and graceful, but there was something Chris couldn't place. Her feet never made a sound on the ground. He brushed it off, thinking it was just nerves. That day, Chris left the market without half of what he came for, but with her number saved in his phone. Over the next 2 weeks, Chris and Precious became inseparable. He took her to Polo Park Mall. They ate suya at Opera Square, and sat under the trees behind Robin's stores talking for hours. She never let him pick her up or visit her house. "My auntie is very strict," she always said. Chris didn't care. He had never felt this alive. She was funny, mysterious, and deeply affectionate. He fell hard. His friends, like Michael and Faith, teased him about falling in love with a market girl so fast, but Chris didn't care. One afternoon, as they sat on a bench near the Lion Building, she placed her head on his shoulder and whispered, "If I asked you to marry me today, what would you say?" Chris laughed. "I would say yes." "Good," she said softly, "because I've been waiting for someone like you." That night, Chris dreamt of smoke swirling in the shape of a woman dancing under the moon. He woke up drenched in sweat. But when he called her the next morning, her voice calmed him. "Dreams are just stories our minds tell," she said. "Don't worry. I'm here now." 2 weeks later, Precious surprised Chris with a cooked meal in takeaway bowls: jollof rice, moi, and grilled fish. "I made it myself," she said, placing it gently on his dining table. Chris smiled, touched by the gesture. As they ate, he watched her. There was something graceful about her hands, about the way she moved, like she floated instead of walked. After dinner, she stood and looked him straight in the eyes. "Chris, I want to marry you." He coughed. "Wait, for real?" "Yes. If you love me, let's not waste time. My auntie has already approved. All you need to do is bring your people." Chris, overwhelmed but enchanted, agreed. "Next weekend," he said. "I'll bring my uncle and my people. We'll come for the introduction." "Good," she said, smiling. "But just know, my life is not like other women's." "Are you sure?" Chris nodded. "Whatever your story is, I'll walk with you." She touched his face. "Then promise me, Chris, that no matter what happens, you won't run." "I promise," he said, sealing his fate with a kiss. Chris gathered his uncle, Mr. Dominic, his sister Amaka, and 2 close friends. They dressed in traditional attires and drove to the address Precious had given, an old house near the edge of New Haven, past a quiet stretch of road surrounded by tall trees. Precious greeted them at the gate, radiant in a coral wrapper and blouse. Her aunt, Mama Rose, was seated in the parlor, an older woman with sharp eyes and a knowing smile. The wine carrying went smoothly. Precious was asked to find Chris among the crowd, and she walked gracefully towards him, the room holding its breath as she handed him the drink. "You've chosen well," Mama Rose said. "But remember, some brides come with stories." Everyone laughed, thinking it was just a cultural saying. They left that day with a wedding date fixed, 2 Saturdays away. Back in the car, Amaka whispered to Chris, "That house gave me chills." Chris chuckled. "You watch too many horror films." But deep down, something inside him stirred, something that made him grip the steering wheel tighter. The night after the introduction, Chris had the dream again. He was standing in a large, empty hall filled with mist. Precious stood across from him, barefoot, her white dress floating. But where her feet should have been, there was only smoke, twisting, curling, moving like it was alive. "Don't run," she whispered. "You promised." He woke with a jolt, his heart pounding. He turned on all the lights in his room and sat staring at his phone. In the morning he called her. "Babe, have I seen you in my dreams before?" She was quiet for a moment. "Some connections go beyond the physical. Maybe your spirit knows mine." Chris didn't understand, but he pushed the fear aside. Love was never logical, he told himself. He threw himself into planning the wedding, venue, photographer, cake. But deep inside, something gnawed at him. He hadn't seen her feet once since they met. The wedding was held at a popular event center in Independence Layout. Precious wore a flowing white gown with silver lace. Her veil covered her face, but Chris could see her glowing smile beneath it. Everyone cheered as they exchanged vows. Pastor Ifani pronounced them husband and wife, and they shared their first kiss as a couple. The reception was lively, high-life music blaring, food flowing, guests dancing. But Chris noticed one thing. No one ever saw her change shoes. She danced lightly, glided across the floor, and when someone tried to help her down the steps, she politely refused. "I'm fine," she said, her smile unwavering. Faith leaned over to Chris. "Your wife day float oh. You sure say she day touch ground." Chris laughed it off. "You day craze. She's just light-footed." That night, Chris carried Precious over the threshold of his apartment. She looked around and nodded slowly. "This place will do." "For what?" he asked. "For the truth," she whispered. Chris didn't know what she meant. Not yet. Chris had set up scented candles and soft music in their bedroom. Precious stepped inside, her white dress trailing behind her. "Let me freshen up," she said, stepping into the bathroom. She stayed long and he began to worry. When she came out, she had removed her veil, her makeup gone. She looked younger, softer, but her eyes had dark shadows beneath them. Then she stepped forward. Her gown shifted, and for the first time Chris looked down. She had no feet. Just smoke. Thin, gray smoke curling from her ankles, floating inches above the ground. Chris froze. "You promised you wouldn't run," she said, her voice now layered, like two people speaking at once. Chris backed away slowly. "What are you?" "I am your wife," she said simply. "And now you must know who I am." The lights flickered. The room grew cold, and Chris screamed. Chris sat on the floor, clutching his chest, shaking. Precious hovered before him, the smoke beneath her gown pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. "I didn't lie to you," she began. "I only waited for you to love me first. You see, I died 3 years ago. Chris's mouth opened but no words came. I was walking home from the market late one evening. A man followed me. He dragged me into the bush behind Golden Valley Estate. He took my life and left me there. The police never found my body. I paused. My spirit wandered, bitter, angry, until I saw you. Your spirit called out to mine. You were kind, pure, and I knew I could rest if I was loved. Chris tried to speak, but his voice cracked. Why me? Because love can release even the forgotten, she said. But if you reject me now, I'll never find peace. I will haunt this earth forever. Chris looked into her eyes that were still human, still hurting. He wanted to run, but something, pity, fear, or love, held him rooted. Tell me what to do, he whispered. The days after the wedding were filled with silence. Chris couldn't sleep. Precious floated around the house like mist. She didn't eat. She didn't breathe. Yet somehow she was always present. He avoided her during the day, but at night she lay beside him, not touching but near enough to chill his bones. Her presence warped the air. He tried calling Pastor Ifani. Pastor, he whispered over the phone. My wife, something is wrong. Pray, the pastor advised, and bring her for deliverance. But when Chris suggested church, Precious looked at him sadly. If I enter a church, my body will scatter. Is that what you want? Chris shook his head quickly. No, I want to help you. You can, she said, but not with church, not with prayers, with truth. That night, the walls of the house began to sweat. Paint peeled. The air grew heavier. Chris knew he couldn't keep living like this. He had married a ghost, and she was unraveling everything. Desperate, Chris visited Mama Rose, Precious's so-called aunt, at the house in New Haven. The place looked abandoned. The windows were broken, and vines curled around the gate. But she was there, waiting like she knew he would come. You saw her feet, didn't you? She said without greeting. Chris nodded. Mama Rose sighed. She came to me 2 years after her death. I raised her spirit with old rites from my mother's people in Ehamufu. I shouldn't have done it. But she begged me. For what? To find peace. To feel love again. Chris swallowed. Can I help her? Yes, but it comes with a price. You must find her bones and lay them to rest properly. Only then can she cross. Otherwise, she will remain in between. And you will too. Where are the bones? He asked. Mama Rose looked away. Near the place she died. Behind Golden Valley Estate. Buried beneath a twisted tree. Chris nodded. He had to finish this. For Precious. For himself. That night, Chris took a flashlight and walked the narrow path behind Golden Valley Estate. The area was quiet, overgrown, and filled with the hum of insects. He followed Mama Rose's instructions. 3 turns, then a slope near a mango tree. Finally he saw it. A crooked tree with bark like cracked skin. Chris dug with his hands. The soil was soft. He dug until he found what looked like fragments, bones. Small, broken, fragile. Pieces of cloth still clung to them, white with lace embroidery. He wept. He didn't know why, but he cried for the girl who never got to live, for the wife he never truly had, for the peace they both deserved. He placed the bones in a basket and carried them back home, whispering apologies as he walked. Precious was waiting by the door. You found me, she whispered. Yes, Chris said. Then bury me properly. Chris called his uncle Dominic and Amaka. He told them only part of the truth, that they needed to rebury Precious in her family land in Nsukka. They didn't ask too many questions. At dawn they drove to the village. An elder, Chief Madu, agreed to perform the rites. They buried the bones beneath an udala tree. A chicken was sacrificed, and kola nuts broken. As the dust covered her remains, a sudden wind swept the area. The trees swayed and the air shimmered. Chris looked up and saw her. Precious, dressed in white, floating beside the tree. But this time her feet touched the earth. "Thank you," she whispered. "I can rest now." And just like that, she faded into the morning mist. When Chris returned to Independence Layout, his house felt different. The air was lighter. The walls no longer bled moisture. The lights stayed on. He walked into the bedroom and found the bedsheets neatly arranged. On his pillow was a note, written in delicate cursive. "Love can heal even the dead. Thank you for choosing not to run, Precious." He held the paper to his chest and cried, not out of fear but peace. That night, he slept soundly for the first time in weeks. And when he dreamt, it wasn't of smoke or shadows. It was of Precious, dancing barefoot on the grass, smiling. Weeks passed. Chris returned to Garki Market one Saturday, needing fruit. As he browsed the stalls, a young woman selling oranges smiled at him. "You're the man who married the ghost," she whispered. Chris froze. "What did you say?" She smiled again. "Nothing. Enjoy your oranges." He turned to leave quickly, his heart pounding. But as he walked, he noticed something. The market felt different now. Softer, quieter, almost like something that had been watching, was finally gone. That night, he sat on his balcony, looking at the moon. "Rest well, Precious," he whispered. Chris never married again. Not because he couldn't, but because he didn't need to. He had seen a love that crossed the borders of life and death, and survived. He spent the rest of his life helping people who had suffered loss. He told their stories. He listened. He gave peace where he could. And sometimes, late at night, he would hear soft footsteps in his living room. Just one, then silence. He would smile and go back to sleep. Dear listener, some say the story of the bride with no feet is just a tale. But in Enugu, behind the mango trees, people still leave flowers near a crooked tree. Some believe love is a light that even death cannot extinguish. Do you believe in spirits that love? Would you keep a promise, even if your bride had no feet? Let me know in the comments. And remember, some markets sell more than fruit. They sell fate. Dear viewers, what lesson did you learn from this chilling tale? Share your thoughts in the comments. If the story touched you, please give it a like, share with friends, and subscribe for more. Till next time, stay blessed and beware of who you marry.